PJ Sweeney, your Camp Tex Lake manager with the Girl Scouts of Central Texas, and I'm excited to be hanging out with the Crate Joy folks, showing you one of my favorite things that we do here at Camp Tex Lake, and that is making some homemade bird feeders and some bird watching journals. So one of the cool things about all the different wildlife that we have, both inside of Austin or anywhere you are in the country, is the fact that there's birds everywhere. And so it's one of the easiest wildlife to see, but it's really important to make sure that they have enough food in their natural environment. And so today we're gonna have a little bit of wild bird seed on our bird feeders so that we can actually set up a bird watching station wherever you're at. The materials we're going to be using today are a jar of peanut butter. If you're allergic to peanut butter or don't have any peanut butter, you can use water-soluble or washable glue. It has to be washable glue or else it can make the birds sick. So today I'm going to use peanut butter, but once again, you can use washable glue if you want. I need something to spread the peanut butter with. I need a toilet paper tube or a pine cone, something to put the peanut butter on. We need bird seed, a hole punch, something to hang our bird feeder, and something to roll the bird feeder and the bird seed in so we don't make a huge mess at our house. Okay? So that's how we're gonna make our bird feeder, is using all of these items. And then once we have the bird feeder done, we are going to do a bird watching journal. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our peanut butter or your glue, you're gonna open it up. I like crunchy peanut butter, so I got peanut butter enough for me and for the birds. So I'm going to take my spreading tool. You know what? It just occurred to me that before we start spreading the peanut butter on, we probably should get the parts to hang it up so that those don't get messy and peanut buttery too. So before you start spreading, you're going to take whatever you're using to put your bird seed and everything on. In this case, my toilet paper tube. I'm going to make a couple of hole punches so I can easily hang it. If you end up doing this with a pine cone, you don't have to punch holes. And we are going to make the hanging part of our feeder. So I like to just tie a couple of knots on each side of my bird feeder, rather than running it across, just because that's the way I like to do it. I'm just going to tie a couple of knots into my bird feeder holder, kind of like this guy. And so eventually this is what it's going to look like when it is completely covered in seeds for the birds. Then what we're going to go ahead and do, now that we have our bird feeder hangable, we are going to take the peanut butter, or once again, if you want, you can use your water-soluble glue, and we are going to spread a nice thick layer all over our bird feeder. So you want it nice and thick because this is what's going to hold all that bird seed. Nice thick layer. I like crunchy peanut butter. It also gives the birds a little something extra, an extra treat. Now, there are birds all over the world. So even if you live in the middle of a city, birds are one wildlife animal that you can count on to see. And the cool thing about living in Central Texas is that we in Central Texas are part of what's called the Central Migratory Flyway. That's a really fancy way of saying we are basically the highway, or we're on the highway when birds are migrating from north to south and from south to north. So that's why in the spring and in the fall, you tend to see a lot of birds. My sister actually gets a ton of wood ducks at her house. And they're very noisy, and they'll stick around for about a month while they rest, and then they continue on their way either south to Mexico or north to Canada. Because birds that migrate do so looking for food, Typically it's part of the weather. So when it's cold, they want to be in the south where it's warmer. And when it is hot, they want to be up north where it's a little cooler. I don't know about you guys, but today and this week it's been pretty hot. I wouldn't mind being in Canada myself with all the heat. So now that we have our fully peanut butter covered bird feeder, now that we have it ready to hang, what we're going to go ahead and do next is we're going to open our bird seed and we're going to roll that peanut butter covered bird feeder in the bird seed. Okay. I'm going to pour some of this bird seed out onto my plate. And the bird seed that we chose is specifically for wild birds, so you can get different kinds of bird seed out there. There are, in this bird seed, these big black things. Those are black oil sunflower seeds. Those are a favorite of cardinals. These smaller seeds, the red and the white smaller seeds, are a favorite of different types of finches. So this is a really, really good bird mix. I'm trying to keep my seeds on my plate. This is a really good mix for wild birds. One of the challenges with any wildlife is as more and more people are moving into the cities, it pushes the wildlife further and further out. So by putting a backyard feeder in your yard, you're actually helping the wildlife to stay wild and in that area. Because animals need three things to survive. They need food, they need water, and they need shelter. So by doing the bird feeder, we're providing them food. If you leave a dish or a bowl of water out, you're providing them water. And you may have some trees or birdhouses that you put up, and that will help them provide shelter. So you're helping wildlife in your area, even if you're in the inner city. So now that we have our bird seed, we are ready to roll the toilet paper roll in the bird seed. Now this part can get a little bit messy. I don't mind getting messy, but I understand if you have an adult at home who doesn't want you to get too messy, and that's okay. So kind of roll and push just a little bit so that you can make sure you get as much seed on that bird feeder as possible. Okay. Now, I love bird watching. My mom actually does a lot of bird calls, so it's kind of fun to be out here and she'll do bird calls and the birds will actually talk back to her, which is kind of neat. Now, we talked about being part of the central migratory flyway, but not all birds migrate. Some birds live and stay in the same area where they were born. Some birds do migrate north and south. So birds are really, really neat animals. Okay. So when you feel like you've gotten quite a bit on, what you want to do so you don't leave a trail of bird seed through your house, kind of want to shake your bird feeder a little bit. Okay? You know what? I see some holes in my bird feeder where I need some bird seed, so we're going to do a little bit more. We're going to tap, tap, tap. This is why you wanted a nice thick layer of peanut butter or glue. Now again, if you're using glue, it does need to be water soluble, which means washable, so it doesn't hurt the birds' tummies. Again. There you go. I want to get as much seed on here as possible. Now, because birds can get too hot, just like you and me, a couple of tips on where to hang your bird feeder. is I recommend hanging your bird feeder somewhere in the shade. The other reason you want to hang your bird feeder in the shade, in addition to not wanting the birds to get too hot, is the peanut butter can actually get a little bit melty if it warms up too much. So looks like there's not too much bird seed coming off of our bird feeder anymore. So I think my bird feeder looks good. I feel pretty good about this bird feeder. All right. So like I was saying, you want to hang your bird feeder outside in the shade. Keeps the birds nice and cool and keeps your peanut butter from getting all melty and all your bird seed to go away. Now, the other neat thing about using a pine cone or a toilet paper roll, if you use a really strong, sturdy toilet paper roll, like a paper towel roll, you can actually, when all the birds eat all this delicious seed off of here, you can actually come back and do the same thing again, roll the peanut butter onto the paper towel holder, paper towel roll, and then roll in the bird seed, roll all that in the bird seed, and you can hang your feeder back up. So you can use this multiple times, so long as the birds don't tear it up. Okay, so that is our birdseed bird feeder. Couple of other thoughts while you're looking at hanging your birdseed bird feeder. If you're actually going to do some bird watching, you want to make sure you put it in a place that can easily be seen from wherever you're going to be hidden. Now, birds don't necessarily like people. They're scared of us. They think we're going to eat them because birds are what we call a prey animal. That means that they're an animal that other animals eat. So birds are a little bit scared of people. So wherever you hang your bird feeder, you need to hang it in a place where you could see them, but they can't necessarily see you. One of my favorite places to hang bird feeders is outside of my window. So if you have a window where you're standing there washing dishes and you can look up at, if you have a window in your bedroom that you like to sit and look at the birds, then those are going to be the places you're going to want to hang that bird feeder is outside with a direct line of sight. Because birds can also be sensitive to sound, it can be kind of hard to sit quietly for so long and wait for the birds to come to the bird feeder. So that's the other reason I like to hang it somewhere where I can see it inside. And let's face it, guys, I live in Texas, and Texas gets really, 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 really hot. So sometimes when I'm bird watching, it gets too hot for me, even if it isn't too hot for the birds. So that's just another reason that I want to hang the bird feeder somewhere where I can see it from a window. So now that we've done our bird feeder, we are going to make the next thing that you need if you're a good bird watcher, and that is going to be our birding journal, okay? Because memories are great, but I tell you, especially as someone who's getting a little bit older, sometimes I forget things, and I bet you forget things too. So a birding journal, so you can write down the things that you see, maybe you can draw or color the birds that you see, is a really, really, really great tool for any bird watcher. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of cardstock. So this cardstock is bright yellow. And the reason we want to use cardstock is it's a little thicker. It's a little thicker than normal plain paper. And with the cardstock, we're going to fold it, what I like to say is hamburger style. So we're going to fold it so it looks like a little book. Okay? You can do hot dog style if you want, but I find hot dog style, it doesn't give me enough room to write. Okay? Hot dog style is folding vertical. But I like hamburger style because then it's a nice little book and I can keep it. I can keep it next to wherever I watch my birds. So if I'm looking out my window, I can just grab my book and watch my birds. And I'm going to put a title on this book because I want to make sure everybody knows that it's my bird watching book. So I'm going to write PJ's Birding Journal. And you can title your book whatever you want, but that's what I'm putting on mine. PJ's Birding Journal. Okay. Now we have to have pages to put inside our book. I always like to do a little bit more than I think I'm going to need because I always end up writing more than I think I'm going to do. And I'm more of a writer than a drawer or colorer. So I like to write stories. So I write stories about the birds. So that's going to take up some paper. Okay. This is just plain copy paper. you would use for any printer. You can use notebook paper, construction paper, whatever paper you want, but I recommend plain copy paper because it fits easily inside our journal, okay? So I folded my plain copy paper, hamburger style. I folded my journal hamburger style, and now I've made my book. But what happens, I need to secure my book. I need to put a binding on my book, okay? So for that, you can use brads, or today, just because it's a little easier, we're gonna use some staples. So just like any other book, I'm gonna put a binding on it and make some nice, solid staples. Ooh. My stapler thinks my book is exciting and doesn't want to leave, so we're going to try that again. There we go. Now, if you're having trouble with your staples, it may be that your book's a little, my book's a little thick because I was so excited. There's plenty of things I want to write about when I hang up my bird feeder. And that's what happened. It does tend to mess up the staples a little bit, but I'd rather have more pages than pretty staples. So that's just me. If you're challenged by doing the staples, that might be a time that you ask an adult at home for help. Because like I said, if it's a thick book, and you kind of heard me slam the stapler a little bit, might have a little bit more trouble. So now that I have my birding book good to go, I'm gonna think about some of the different things I wanna see while I'm bird watching. Now, you don't have to think of things in advance, but I think it's kind of like a scavenger hunt when you try and find certain things you want to see. So some of the categories I thought up a little earlier of things that you might want to put in your book, you might want to put what your favorite bird is, a page for your favorite bird. If you already know what your favorite bird is, or if you're figuring that out, that's cool too. Maybe the most colorful bird you saw, maybe the loudest bird you saw, bird you saw, maybe the biggest bird you saw. Out here at camp, we have turkeys, and they are so big. They're bigger than my Labrador dog. These are huge turkeys. Maybe the smallest bird you saw. Maybe the funniest bird you saw. I have a couple of cardinals that like to live in a tree at my house, and they will just dance and be silly all day long. They're hilarious. Maybe you want to have a couple of pages for things you see other than birds, because even if you're in the city, there's still wildlife out there. You may still see some cool bugs, some butterflies, a bunch of other animals, a small rabbit. You never know. So I recommend thinking of some of these really cool options. So a couple of things before we let you guys go regarding the bird feeder and bird watching. Just a couple of tips and tricks from me to you. Just a couple of tips and tricks from me to you. Whenever you're bird watching, the two best times to go bird watching is at dawn or early morning, because it's cooler, because that's when the birds are out and about eating their breakfast, and at dusk as night starts to kind of fall. Now, there are some birds that only come out during the day. That means they're diurnal. That means they're daytime birds. And there are some birds that only come out at night, which means they're nocturnal. But most of those birds overlap a little bit at dawn, which is really early in the morning, a little too early for me, I'll be honest. And they also come out together at dusk, which is when the sun starts setting, because that's a good hunting time. It's cooler, it's time for dinner for the daytime birds, it's time for breakfast for the nighttime birds. So that's going to be your best times to go bird watching, is early in the morning and in the late afternoon, evening as the sun starts to set. Another thing I want to tell you about is that there are some birds and a lot of different animals that are going extinct. So if you're really passionate about birds, there's some really amazing resources out there. There is the SeaWorld Conservation Fund has some really cool resources. The Audubon Society is 100% dedicated to birds. In fact, here at Tex Lake, there is a type of endangered species of bird. It's the yellow-chested warbler that lives here on camp, which is really cool. So we are a protected habitat for that type of bird. So if you're really fascinated and really love birds, there's a lot of really cool resources out there that I would encourage you to look into, because bird watching is a hobby that you can do whether you're 6 or 60. It's something that you can do your entire life. So I really appreciate you going on this journey with me. I had a lot of fun making my bird feeder and my bird watching journal, and I think it's time for me to go hang my bird feeder. See you next time.